Hi, this is Jim.
And Ralph.
And we welcome you to Psychology Takeaway, the podcast where we look at new things in psychology or old things that might be relevant today and try to make them relevant to you.
And to us.
Hi, Ralph.
Hi, Jim.
How are you doing? I'm doing well today. How are you?
I'm well.
Okay. Now, we've been talking for the last few weeks about mental health on campus.
We have.
And we thought it would be a good thing to invite somebody on the podcast who actually is spending a lot of time on campus, as opposed to you and I who come here and do 15 minutes a week and drink coffee. So we looked around to see who has contact with students. Well, professors do, yes.
Yes.
But there's a new pastor at the local church here on campus. Yes, we do have a church on campus. It's a Catholic church in St. Mary's Parish. And I'd like to introduce our group to Father Matt Gembrowski. Did I get it right?
Gembrowski.
There's an R in there.
Yeah, but that's more correct than the vast majority of people get it, so props to you.
Okay. Well, welcome to CMU. This has been your, second or third year?
This is my third year.
Wow. Okay. And it's only recently that we've kind of run into each other, right?
Yeah, well, don't feel too bad because we're right in the middle of campus next to Anspa Hall, and people can walk by for 4 years and still tell me, I had no idea there was a church here. That big sign that says St. Mary's, the cross on the building.
Actually, there are 3 churches within a stone's throw over there. Yep. Well, we've been talking about mental health, mental illness, and how people can get help. But maybe you could give us a perspective, Father Matt, on the students that you see, in your profession, students on campus here at CMU.
Sure, in terms of their mental health and how it relates to spirituality.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at least in the Catholic thought, a person we want to have integral development of the entire person. So all aspects of a person's life are interconnected in some way. Physical health,
social, emotional,
mental, sexual, spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And what often happens is people will be very attentive to their physical health,
right,
their social health,
emotional
intellectual health, emotional. But then spiritual can fall into a different realm.
Mm-hmm.
Our culture today sees spirituality in the realm of a subjective experience. So our desire for transcendence is more, it's subjective to each and every person. So you may believe in a God, and that's great for you, but I don't. And so that's fine for me, and we can go our separate ways and live in peace.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what spirituality is. Spirituality is an objective form. It's this sense in the human heart that I desire to transcend the limits of my natural life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There has to be something more.
You mean something more than me?
More than just me, more than just the day-to-day activities I have. Throughout every culture and every time, there's this desire for transcendence. And that comes out in many, many different ways. Different kinds of religions, different spiritualities, different forms of prayer. But it's objectively true that this desire for transcendence exists.
Okay, you've used that word transcendence frequently. Maybe you could define it for us.
Transcendence would be the experience, the idea, the reality that the physical world as we see it is not explanatory in and of itself.
You mean there's more to life than
There's more to life than the particles bumping into each other, right? That there has to be an overarching narrative to life, a why. Our culture is very, very big on science, which is great. Science has done a lot for all of us. But science will always tell you what and how, but it's never going to tell you why. It will never give value statements. So kind of an example I use for people is science will tell you how Hitler made the gases to kill the Jews in the Holocaust, how it was put together, the different chemical compounds. Science will not tell you why that was wrong. You need a different kind of thinking for that. And so if there is no overarching narrative to life, something that transcends the day-to-day activities, there's no ultimate why. We see it over and over again. The human spirit can die or turn in on itself. I'm sure you see that in psychological health. So this is an objective realm of the human person that has to be attended to. There may be different ways of attending to it, but simply saying, well, that's not my thing, I don't really deal with that, that is only going to harm a person's health. When one area of my life is harmed, it affects every other area.
The lack of balance there.
Correct. So if I'm not paying attention to my physical health, my mental health will suffer. And so with my social health. And the same is true for my spiritual health, this attentiveness to the transcendence of life and my participation in it. If that is not attended to, the other areas of life will be affected.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, in my thinking, if I deal with somebody who is an agnostic, who says, I don't know, they can still find transcendence. But somebody who is an atheist, who says, I know there is nothing other than atoms collecting and colliding, for them, it's much harder to find transcendence.
Sure. Yeah, that's true, because the atheist in many positions puts themselves in a really tough bind. You have to exclude certain evidence from life, and it's often left without an explanation. So for an example would be this area of transcendence. Every human culture, every human person, and I'm sure you know the psychological studies on religion and these other topics in this area. Without transcendence, a person is harmed, they're kept from fully flourishing without that overarching narrative. So the atheist, if we're going to pursue the naturalist perspective, that there is only nature, there is only physical processes, well, that has to be explained in some way, right? Why is it that without transcendence, the human being fails to flourish? Right? And that puts the atheist in a tough bind, I'll admit it. So it's difficult for those people to address that situation. I'm not saying that, so for that reason, you must believe in the Roman Catholic Church. No, I'm saying that, for this reason, there has to be something more, right? And that and many other areas of evidence as well. But I'll agree with you. It's very difficult for someone in that position to find transcendence.
When I was first taking psychology back at Michigan State in the 60s, something was sort of brewing in the environment. It's called transcendental meditation. And the idea was that you could transcend through meditation, however that would be. And as a matter of fact, if the viewers take a look on YouTube, you'll see that we've done a lot of meditation videos. They're short ones. They're maybe 10, 15 minutes long. And we have, yellow music, green music. Yeah, various, things for anxiety. And so one of the ways of getting spiritual health, if you're an atheist, is through this kind of meditation, right? Okay. Are there other ways?
Well,
Your way, Ralph.
yeah. Now, I'm a believer, but I also find solace and sometimes a feeling of being one with the universe by going out into nature and just sitting and absorbing what is going on.
Yeah.
And, watching the chipmunks and so on and so forth. And that, I find that unifying and giving me a feeling that, yes, I belong.
Yeah, that sense of belonging is really, really important. And I'm sure you guys know of the existentialist philosophers of the 20th century, that man is just kind of thrown into life and he doesn't belong. And this desire to belong is a greater part of a whole, to fit in that overarching narrative. It's very, very important. It's the human experience to look around at the rest of creation, the rest of reality, and go, I'm different from this in some fundamental way, right? Because of my free will or from my intellect, right? It's this sense of I don't belong here. And so when I can reconnect with nature to see how I fit in with the part of the whole, that can be very helpful feeding this transcendental part of the human heart.
Yeah.
Now, You and I were talking on the way over here, Ralph, about Viktor Frankl, and about you mentioned Hitler. A lot of people died in concentration camps. You know, how did Frankl predict who was going to live and who was going to die, Ralph?
Well, what he said was that people who believed in something, who had an inner meaning to their life, were survivors. And people who said, there's nothing here for me, gave up. And once you give up in a concentration camp, I think the people who are the guards look at you as you're trying to work and say, this one is dying, this one has nothing. And off you get marched to the showers. And so those who have a sense of inner life, a rationale to connect with transcendence, if you will, stay more able.
Yeah. So tying this back to the students, and you were saying, before we began, that when a lot of college students come to campus, it's their first time to be on their own, and I don't have to go to church anymore if I was brought to church when I was growing up, and I can finally go on my own way. This is, understandable because many people in their minds associate religion or church with simply rules. I follow rules. Rules are a limit on my freedom. I don't want that limit on my freedom. I go my own way. But what I tell a lot of the students, what does religion give us, right? And again, I'm a Catholic. You know what team I'm on, right? But what's very helpful for the human mind, as a Catholic, as one in relationship with God, I know who I am. I know where I've come from. I know where I'm going, and I know how to get there. And I know the parameters of the game I'm playing, right? This game of life. It's been given to me by God. And so I have a very, natural sense of I belong and I fit in this world. And there's a purpose and everything is heading somewhere. So for many students who can feel that they're just kind of drifting in life, I don't really know what I'm doing. I may be studying a major I don't really feel passionate for, that I don't really belong with. Their social life may be all in turmoil because of some bad choices or, low social skills or whatever. And this sense of a foundation is extremely helpful for them. That transcendence is up here, we think, but it's also down here. It's the foundation for the rest of our lives that's built upon it.
You kind of said it in church the other day, and I was there. Know what the rules are, follow them, and then you said have fun.
Yeah.
So
for students who come in and they have drifted away from their foundation, in your experience, do you find many of them, when they talk to you, are searching for meaning? Or because you are a Catholic priest in a Catholic parish, do they know the meaning? Do they know the foundation?
It depends on the person. So for the people that I'll see on a day-to-day basis, they are Catholic parishioners. And that kind of narrative, because we go to Mass every Sunday, you can go every day, we're reminded of that implicitly. The Catholic prayer, the Rosary, where you just pray the beads over and over again. You pray these different mysteries of Jesus's life, and you meditate on them. If you do that every day, what's the healthy thing of that? I'm constantly bringing to mind this story of my salvation, of how I fit. So those that are Catholics have a pretty good sense of identity and who they are and where they're going. But we'll have confession every day, and we'll have times when I'm in the office every day, and very, very often, non-Christians, non-Catholics will come in, I think because they see a church and they think, well, hopefully they have something to offer me, and they'll come in, and those people are searching for meaning. A lot of them. And a lot of them, it helps them to reconnect with, to re-look at the faith of their youth. And maybe it was not everything I thought it was when I cast it aside. Maybe there was more to this than I really saw, just because I was a child and I couldn't have experienced it then.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another person in the studio, Alex. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Hey, now you're here at the fourth floor of Park Library, every day, but you have another job on Thursdays, right?
I have a couple, yeah.
Yeah.
Fridays now.
Fridays
yeah.
now? Okay, so you get to see students in a different context than, say, Ralph and I or Father Matt
Well, you guys are welcome to come out and join us.
at the bar.
Yeah.
Okay. But,
They're usually singing karaoke. I could see you guys doing that.
okay. Now, can you relate anything that we've been talking about to your observations at the bar?
Are they searching for meaning there too? Possibly. Yeah. But definitely lost. A lot of them are definitely lost.
Mhm.
It's kind of sad.
So, yeah, like
Yeah.
Ralph
Filling
and
the
I.
void.
Mm-hmm.
Ralph and I, as college
Instead of
students.
screaming into the void, they're drinking into the void.
Yeah. Well, we're from Canada, and so we grew up with Drink Canada Dry, and
Yeah.
we both tried that, didn't we?
We did. We didn't succeed, but we had them working nights.
So, yeah, some of this then you get too, then, right, Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I find with a lot of students is they'll notice finally, even if they cannot articulate it because they don't have the language to do so, but they'll notice this desire for transcendence is not being met, and that there's a void within them, and then that makes them feel that something's wrong. There's something wrong with me because I feel this void. No, that void is a universal human experience, right? The fact that you're experiencing this and you're aware of it. Now, how many people, in order to fill that desire that they're not even aware exists, are looking in all these different places, whether that's the bar or this relationship or whatever, or even their work.
Yeah.
How many people throw themselves into their profession? Think of all these TV shows about lawyers or cops, and they're
Yeah.
always at the office. They're just giving it their all,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they throw themselves into their work, trying to fill that void for transcendence.
Okay, for the meaning in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ralph, you've talked in the past about this. We work for a while, 20, 30, 40 years, right? And then we retire.
Yeah.
What happens to the college professors that you've worked with
Well,
after they lose their class?
the interesting thing to me is that watching my fellow professors as they retired, on average, they lived about 3 to 4 years
Yeah.
because their meaning in life
Was all their
was all in their
academic
job.
face, and yeah.
And they finished and they said, "Oh no, I'm going to live the good life and play golf and ski in the winter." And 4 years later, they were, hollow shells, or they were pushing up daisies. And I would say, what happened? He was so vigorous when he was, in the day of his retirement party, and now he's passed. And I think that, if your meaning in life is only centered on your job, you are likely to have a very short retirement.
Yeah, and so this touches a theological point that is very tied up with psychology. And it's from what space am I living? So the church has an acronym for RIM, relationship, identity, mission. So where am I living from? Where do I find my core? For many people, it is the mission. What am I doing? Right? What is my job? My friendships. What am I doing for that friend? Or what my talents are. The problem with that is all of those things can be taken away.
Mm-hmm.
You'll retire. You can get injured. That friend can move away. Right? All of these things can be taken away. If I put the foundation of my life in any of those things, eventually I'll be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
So in the church, we say live from the place of relationship. So for a Catholic, it would be, who am I? Who is Matt Gembrowski? I am a beloved son of God the Father. That's who I am at my core. It's a relationship with him, which can never be taken away. That's what I tell people when they come to talk to me about their sins. God doesn't love you any more for all the good things you do. You cannot impress him. And he doesn't love you any less for all the evil you do. which is very different from a lot of human relationships.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You
Yeah,
hurt your
definitely.
family too many times, and maybe they'll just reject you, and you're cast away. So, at the foundation of my life is this relationship that cannot change,
Okay.
and in which I have value and dignity in this identity.
And this is something that you know that you know that you know.
Yeah,
It's like in your DNA almost, right?
yeah, it has to be.
Okay.
And then that is the foundation for a very psychologically healthy life. I have value and dignity that's not dependent on the things I do or don't do, and it can never be taken away. And everybody wants that. Everyone wants to know that I am loved and I am worthy and I'm valuable. I mean, how much of therapy is trying to get to, believe those truths that I have inherent dignity and worth and value. And for the religious, especially in the Catholic Church, that is proclaimed as the foundation, right? From which everything else flows. Not mission, and then my mission dictates my identity, and my identity dictates my relationship the other way. My relationship with God dictates my identity, and then from that flows my mission. What am I doing?
Okay.
Not the other way around.
So identity that's the big relationship is the big word.
Relationship and identity are
Okay.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone does you dirty, that is a break in the relationship between another person and yourself, but that doesn't really phase you.
Personally, me?
Yeah.
Like just in my own personal life?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a very short story. There's this priest that I know, Father Bill Rutkowski. He's the vicar general of our diocese. So he's the number 2 under the bishop. And whereas bishop is the face, and he's the shiny face, Father Bill has to deal with all the problems. So I get it off to him.
Yeah.
So a lot of people come to him and they're just angry, or he has to discipline priests or whatever. And every time I see Father Bill, he's just happy, smiling. How you doing today? Great. And I talked to him one day, like, Father Bill, how are you always this way? Like with all your things you have to deal with. And he said, a long time ago, I just decided that I'm never going to take anything personally. I will never take anything personally. When someone wrongs me, it's probably something that was in their past or some issue they're dealing with, and I'm just the target. So it doesn't affect me. I mean, I'm just like anybody else. I can get upset. But once I'm removed from the situation, look, I do things that are wrong, and I can always make excuses to pin them on how I was feeling or what happened to me or whatever. Yeah. And so by not taking it personally and saying that this relationship can never be broken, again, it gives me that security of life from which to build on.
Yeah. One of the things that Ralph and I have noticed is that a lot of people are really thin-skinned. I don't know if that's a good term anymore, but it's easy to tick them off.
Yeah. And
it's not healthy to be the one who's ticked off.
And one of the things that there's a little meme that I saw that said, just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. And a lot of people I find are just really, really, really easy to get offended.
That's true in religious circles too. You have some Christians who are losing their mind over everything that happens. But it comes in the form of when people will say, don't judge me. Who are you to judge me? Right? And because I don't place my value in my ideas or what I'm doing, I meet many people who think that religion is a bunch of crap, right? You're a fool for doing this. Oh, you're a Catholic priest, you're celibate. That's so dumb. Christians are this, Christians are that. And for me, it's, okay, well, you believe that, and you have a right to do that. It doesn't really affect me. However, if someone, let's say the Catholic rules on sexuality can be seen as pretty strict. If someone is, let's say, hooking up, at the bar or something, and that becomes known, who are you to judge me? Who are you to judge me for that action? Like, oh, well. Why do you care? If you're a free, independent person and you've made this choice, why do you care what someone else thinks about it? Why does that bother you to be judged? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
I guess, I don't know. I'm trying to get this through. Do a lot of our students, Ralph, feel like they are being judged by their parents or by their boss or their coworkers? Or
I think
other people?
a lot of people feel they are constantly being judged.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting because the second most common thing that research says about spirituality and students is students express a need for connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to feel connected to somebody that you assess is judging you all the time, negatively
Yeah.
or even positively. And, they're saying, hey, you did a really good job here,
Mm-hmm.
And you look at that and say, well, yeah, but that means you evaluated me and I can't connect with you quite the same
Sure.
way.
It's a real issue in my mind of, for the church and for our theological concepts, there's the person and then there's what the person does, right? A person is not identified with their actions, right? So you may have stolen something, but for me to go, and you're just a thief and that's all you'll ever be. No, that's not your identity. It's something you did, right? Or it's a part of you. Remember, my identity for us is I'm a beloved son of the Father. And so when I can separate my actions from who I am, right? Yes, I've done them. I bear responsibility for them, but they don't define me. My weaknesses and failures don't define me. That's very freeing. And at the same time, it's not helpful to lie. So if something is evil or wrong or harmful, to point that out to somebody, like what you're engaging in is very harmful for yourself and for others. If a person associates who I am with what I do, they will be offended and feel judged. You're attacking my very self. No. What you're doing, not you as a human person. But when people combine those two things, one, that's psychologically unhealthy because then you're trapped by all your failures and your weaknesses. But if I separate them, I can at least objectively look at what I've done and say, that was good, that was evil. But it doesn't affect my dignity and value. So when people will put these two things together, an example of this is where Catholicism gets really unpopular in the culture, would be for the LGBT movement. For an LGBT person in that movement, their sexual identity is maybe the foundational part of their identity. This is who I am. And we'd say, yes, that's a part of who you are. I'm not going to, if you say you're gay or trans, that's your subjective experience. Who am I to say, no, you're not, right? But it's not the main part of who you are, right? If I say that this is who I am, this kind of person, that's one of the reasons the church is so against it. Okay, the behavior is one thing, but for me to say this is my foundational identity, no, you are much more than that. You are much more than just your sexual desires, right? And to degrade everything just down to that point is to cheapen a human being, right? So that's where we can get really unpopular. It's why the real reason why the church takes such a stand against it, not against those people, because again, people and what people do are not the same thing. But this idea that the worth and value of a human person can be taken down simply to that sexual desires are the core of it. We'd say, no, you are worth much, much more than that. You have much, much more dignity and more facets to your personality than just that.
Okay. Now, you're talking like a psychologist, person.
Yeah.
And, we don't judge the person.
Yeah.
We talk to them about behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you think that, certainly we've advocated that people come to see psychologists, right, Ralph?
We have, yeah.
For therapy. I think we've got just a couple minutes left here.
Sure.
Father Matt, would you give a commercial for finding meaning and talking with a man of the cloth, person of the cloth?
Well, they're not all the same. Just like psychologists are not all the same. You have good ones and bad ones, and you have to look for one that's not going to lead you astray. Unfortunately, I think it's in psychology too. There can be a lot of manipulation in religion, right? A lot of ministers or priests can, rather than respecting and honoring a person and helping them, can manipulate them. So that's something to always be on the lookout for.
Well, Father, I wanted to ask you, and this is going to be a question that's maybe too large to do in one podcast, but I was going to ask you the question because you've used the word evil several times. What is evil?
Sure. So what the church means by evil is not what most people think it means. When we use the word evil in normal parlance, we think of sinister. Like that was a sinister person. That person tried to actively cause my downfall. They're evil. No, something is good in the eyes of the church, and this is where all the church's morality is based. If it helps an object, a subject, to flourish. So the example I use for people, it's a very dumb example, is a tomato plant, right? I have a big, beautiful tomato plant. What's its purpose? To produce big, beautiful tomatoes, right? Very ripe, good tomatoes. Anything is good that helps that tomato plant to achieve its final end. So
watering the plant, feeding
fertilizing
the plant,
it, sunlight, all those
getting rid
things
of the
are
weeds.
Yeah, all those things are good because they will lead to its flourishing. Anything is evil that keeps it from flourishing or degrades it. So if I pour gasoline instead of water on it and I light it on fire, we'd say that's evil.
Okay.
Right? So that's when the church says good and evil, it doesn't mean sinister. It means whatever X, Y, or Z we're talking about, this will keep the human being from flourishing and keeping it, helping it to move towards its final end, which we would say is union with God, the fullness of life.
Okay. The peak of Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it's a different way of normally using it. If I have no friends, that's evil, right? And someone would say, oh, that's sinister. No, not using that kind of parlance. It's evil because it's keeping me from flourishing. My social health is down.
Yeah.
So that's what we mean by good and evil.
Okay. So I think in the last issue of the Central newspaper, the one that comes out every week, there was an article on loneliness, i.e. not having friends. So is that something that is evil?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'd say because, what is it, John Donne who said no man is an island?
Yeah.
That's just a basic psychological truth. It is almost impossible for a person to make their way through life without depending on others, without the support of others, the encouragement of others. I will say that I sometimes meet students who have had very difficult personal lives because of family or they weren't there. And however they've done it, they've beaten the odds and they're well adjusted and they're not afraid to go out and live life. And I really respect those people, but it's not the norm. All of us need a support group, and it's evil when we don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the priest that you mentioned a few minutes ago,
Father Bill,
does he have a support group?
He does. He has a very good friend, Father Francis from Lansing, and they are very, very close.
So it's not just the, hey, I'm not going to take offense. It's the support of other people too, right?
People want to romanticize the lone wolf, the alpha wolf who is out there leading the pack. That's a fantasy, right? Everybody needs someone to support them.
The other thing about that, the alpha wolf who leads the pack, that's great. But we cannot forget that you've got the pack.
Yeah.
The pack is there to support you. So if you get into a combat as a wolf and you get slashed a couple of times, but you're still the alpha wolf, the rest of the pack will gather around and keep you warm and look after you and lick your wounds, literally. And so you can say, well, yeah, I had the support group that I needed. I'm the lone wolf, but the pack's helping.
If we do meet again, the fear of intimacy would be a great topic to discuss because many people fear real intimacy, which involves vulnerability, kind of dropping the mask. And that's what I also see a lot in our students here at St. Mary and at CMU. The unwillingness to take off the mask so other people can see them as they really are.
Okay. Well, you've just opened another door, Father Matt. And let's pursue that next week, okay?
Sounds good.
Want to take us out, Alex?
Here we go.
So until next week, this is Jim.
And Ralph,
Saying,
keep your stick on the ice.
because we're all in this together.